Mariners lose 5-1. They fall to 12-12 on the season. The series against the Texas Rangers, the team that beat the Mariners, is now even at a game apiece. And unfortunately, your Seattle Mariners are no longer in first place. What a run it was. You can always change that today. Go over the scoring plays. Mariners get on the board first. Josh Rojas triples, and Mitch Haniger has a fielder's choice that scores a run. 1-0 Mariners at the end of the first. End of Mariners scoring plays, all Texas from this point on. Fourth inning, they get a pair of solo homers. Adolis Garcia and Evan Carter take Bryce Miller deep. It's 2-1. Sixth inning, they get two. Jonah Heim singles in both, I believe, unearned runs. Yeah, both unearned runs on an error by Mitch Haniger. That scores a couple. That makes it 4-1 at the end of six. And they get a little insurance with Evan Carter tripling home Adolis Garcia. Evan Carter's a really good player. Really good baseball player. But that makes it 5-1. Mariners get absolutely nothing offensively going really after the first inning because, all the things I just told you. And weirdly, your positives today are offensively. Josh Rojas looks fantastic. Now, he hits at the top of the lineup, and we'll go over why he hits at the top of the lineup today. But he has the triple. He gets another knock. He's hitting 315, 383, 463. That'll work. Is it sustainable? Very much doubted, particularly the 463 portion. Although the 383 is pretty unrealistic too. But he's been great. And not only has he been great offensively, he's looked excellent with the glove. Scuffled a little bit at the start, which is not a huge surprise. Like, fairly new to the position still. Has many more reps other places. He looks legit. He absolutely looks legit. And we'll see if this can keep going. But right now, you have to be thrilled with what Josh Rojas is doing. You do not have to be thrilled with why he's sitting at the top of the lineup. We'll go over that in a second. But speaking of that, Dylan Moore plays shortstop today. He reaches 3 times. He steals a couple of bases. He just looks so much more athletic than he did last year. And that's not a big surprise. He's dealing with scar tissue, which is a horrible thing from everyone I've talked to, and also a really bad song, if we're just being completely honest. Sorry, RHCP fans, but no, it's not good. He has a good game. Ty France stings a couple of singles. I would love to see some extra base hits, but he does have a couple of singles. Looked pretty solid at the plate. Jorge Polanco gets on a couple of times. Of course, he draws another walk. Some guys played okay today, offensively. Not great, but okay. I think that's pretty much the end of positives. So let's talk about one of my favorite positives, and that is that Simply Seattle provides the very best in Seattle sports gear. Awesome stuff for the Mariners, of course. But the Kraken, the Seahawks, Huskies, Storm, Sounders, anything Pacific Northwest related, you can pretty much find at Simply Seattle. Everything Seattle related. We're not selling no Ducks or Beaver stuff. But yes, you can find really good stuff for Simply Seattle. And once you find all that good stuff, use code MOLLYWOP15 to take 15% off your order. That's MOLLYWHOP15, all one word. It's a great deal from great people. Thank you so much, Simply Seattle. There's a link in the description to make it nice and easy for you. All right, the negatives. Pitching. None of it very good. You look at Bryce Miller's line and you see 2 runs given up in 4 innings of work. Don't think that's indicative of how much he struggled for most of the game. Now, he walks, I believe 2 of the first 3 hitters he faces. I think the control got better. The command didn't. And the stuff just wasn't there. Scott Service mentioned it in the postgame show today that he thought that Miller just didn't get into a rhythm. I think that's a perfect description of it. He just never really looked comfortable. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, especially against really good teams like Texas, who, I'm sorry, I still think Texas is a really good baseball team. I don't know what I'm sorry for, but this is going to happen. Bryce Miller in his second season is going to have some oopsie daisies. If these are your oopsie daisies, you'll take it, because it could have been a heck of a lot worse. Heck of a lot worse. The fact he was able to battle through 4 innings and only allow those 2 solo homers is pretty impressive. Having said that, he certainly belongs in the negative section, because he wasn't good enough today. He wasn't good enough today. The bullpen, they give up 3 runs. Only one of them is earned. It didn't pitch well. And it's worth putting out the names that they put out there. Now, Saucedo, we expect more out of him. I still think he's looked really good. And today was not terrible. He gives up the walk. Run comes in to score. I thought he was fine. Tyson Miller and Austin Voth, less so. But, you're down a couple of runs, or you're down at the time just the 1 run. I didn't have a problem going to those guys. You got to keep your bullpen fresh. Got a day game coming up. Don't want to go too crazy using the high leverage guys. Just need him to pitch better. I think Tyson Miller has done a really nice job. I think that's one of the reasons why you saw Colin Snyder get optioned to AAA after he was activated off the injured list, because they've liked what they've seen from him. But he's got to pitch better, and so does Voth. Don't look at the ERA. Just watch them pitch today. They weren't great. Miller much better than Voth in my humble estimation, but yeah, bullpen wasn't great. And even though I pointed out a bunch of guys who had decent offensive days, the offense was not good. Let's get into why the Mariner lineup didn't look great today, on top of not performing well, but just on paper. So J.P. Crawford is scratched with an oblique injury. The way Scott Service was talking is pretty concerning to me. Now, we'll find out what happens on Thursday, which is basically what he said. But I was really hoping to hear, precautionary, yada, yada, yada. That's not what came out of his mouth. And that would be a big loss, because all due respect to Dylan Moore, if that's your starting shortstop, For a couple of days, it's fine. For anything more than that, no, thank you. And I know Crawford's defense, we've talked about it a lot. And I know he hasn't been great with the bat to begin the year, but I think he was really starting to come along and is a very important member of this team. Understatement is understatement. So here's hoping, all due respect to Josh Rojas too, that we see Rojas back in the 9th spot and Crawford hitting at the top of the lineup very soon. But I don't know. And neither do you. But the fact that they don't know, that's a little concerning. And then Cal Raleigh has to sit because he has a broken tooth. He wanted to play. He's a gamer. But unfortunately, Sebi Zavala, that pumpkin turned back into a pumpkin. That pumpkin turned into a pumpkin. He was terrible, at least offensively. 0 for 3 with a couple of strikeouts. His batting average against the not Colorado Rockies is still 0.000. I mean, when you see when one of those guys like Crawford and Raleigh is out, how much this lineup isn't great. When you have 2 of them, oof. And it doesn't help that a lot of guys really struggled, even though I seems like I mentioned half the lineup having a nice day. Julio was bad. Disappointing, especially with how good he's been as of late. 1 strikeout that wasn't a strike. Once again, nope. We're not talking about umpiring. We're not doing it. Molly, we're not talking about umpiring. Lola, we're not talking about umpiring. Minnie, we're not talking about umpiring. I have too many dogs. But very poor game. Very poor offensive game from Julio Rodriguez. And again, disappointing because of how good he had looked the last week. And maybe he gets going again tonight or this afternoon. Doesn't change the fact that he stunk today. Luke Raley looks awful. So we talked about Zavala. Mitch Haniger does have a double and he drives in the run, but just doesn't look like the same player that he did earlier in the season. Like, that's such a weird thing to say. 24 games into the season, still incredibly early. But he doesn't look like the same player he was 2 weeks ago. Don't think it's injury related, just think he's scuffling. But I talked about this a couple days ago. It is concerning because Mitch Haniger was bad when on the field last year. Bad. It wasn't just injury prone. He was bad. Over 60 games, he was a bad baseball player. Just something to keep in mind. Mitch Garver. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say because lots of people have poor 24, 25 game stretches. But this is, especially for somebody who is your designated hitter, he looks atrocious. If not for some decent, if not for some walks, this is an absolute disaster of a first 1/6 of the season. Not even 1/6. 3 more games till 1/6. But holy crap, he looks bad. And I don't know if it's health or just scuffling. Either way, it's not helping. Raley and Garver today, and then add in Zavala, were just awful. On top of Julio's really struggling. And, they get 11 chances for a hit with runners in scoring position, and they got 1. And that was a Ty France single, and unfortunately, he hit it too hard. It was one of those kind of days. And look, these are going to happen. There's that saying that everybody wins 60, everybody loses 60. It's what you do in the other 42. I don't think that's true anymore. I think there's some teams that are not going to win 60 games this year. And there might be a few who don't lose 60 as well. But the overall saying still applies. But it's still frustrating when you see it. It's still frustrating to see them look so good yesterday, even acknowledging that they didn't score any runs for 6 innings. And that makes 15 innings where you've only put 1 run across. But they looked good. They looked good. And they've looked good for most of the past week and a half. Today was bad. And it's okay to be frustrated by how bad they looked. You can acknowledge it's just one game and all sorts of stuff. All sorts of stuff. But you can also acknowledge that they were a bad baseball team today. And it's frustrating to see this because, in part, this was such a pattern last year, too. When they had a fantastic game, they followed it up with a clunker so often. And they've kind of kept with that pattern a little bit this time, too. Luis Castillo on the mound for Seattle, and I believe the Texas Rangers will also start a pitcher. Andrew Heaney. By the way, really fun pitching matchup on Friday. George Kirby against Zach Gallen. That'll be fun. That will be fun. I hope, anyway. Heck, no, I don't. I hope Zach Gallen gives up 26 runs. But on paper, that's a really good pitching matchup. Great chance to win the series, especially with how well Castillo's pitched the last 2 games and how well Castillo's pitched over his career, more importantly. today was frustrating. That is a frustrating L, and one that will stick in my craw for a little bit. Please hit like, please hit subscribe. Forgot to remind you to hit join. Posted my first video with my top 15 Seattle Mariner prospects. I'd really appreciate it if you have the means to subscribe and go check that out. We're going to do our subscriber chat on Sunday. I believe it like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, something like that. I can't remember what time I said it for. It doesn't matter. Hopefully you guys can make it out. But again, for one of the last times, I do not begrudge anyone who doesn't want to spend the $4.99. Totally understand. For those who do, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. For those who don't, it's totally fine. Let's see the Mariners play a little better tomorrow because I didn't like today.